Hey, good evening, everyone. I know the June air has just got everybody so excited. Good evening and welcome. I'd like to call to order our Lucan Biddulph Council meeting for Tuesday, June the 2nd. I would like to acknowledge that I am an ally of Indigenous peoples. The township of Lucan Biddulph is located on the treaty and traditional territory and ancestral lands of many Indigenous peoples and is covered by several Upper Canada treaties. We honor and respect the history, languages, and cultures of the diverse Indigenous peoples who call Lucan Biddulph home. We endeavor to unlearn colonial mindsets and practices and to grow in knowledge. As we build meaningful relationships, we recognize contributions of Indigenous peoples and respect their leadership and partnership in shaping and strengthening our community. We acknowledge historic and ongoing injustices that Indigenous peoples endure in Canada, and we affirm our commitment to honoring Indigenous voices, nations, and cultures, and to moving forward in the spirit of reconciliation and respect. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest? Okay, seeing none. So as I said, it's June, and thank goodness that we've made it here to June. There are many things that are celebrated and recognized during the month of June. But tonight I want to highlight that this week is School Crossing Guard Appreciation Week. And while I know that our school crossing guards are thanked every day by those who cross with them, this week marks the opportunity to formally thank our dedicated guards who help keep our children and families safe each and every school day. Like postal carriers, in all kinds of weather, they show up. And we know that this winter has not been very easy, was not very easy for them. Our crossing guards are a steady, reassuring presence at the formal crossings that we have designated for them around Lucan. And we know that they have to be alert to the traffic that might not always be alert for them. But they do more than manage traffic. They build trust, model responsibility, and create safer routes to school that give parents peace of mind and students a confident start to their day. So did you know that crossing guards are actually employees of the municipality and not the school board? In Lucan, we are fortunate that Don Appleby, Tim Colbert, Brenda Ferris are part of our team. So on behalf of council and the community, we want to extend our sincere gratitude for their commitment, their professionalism, and their care, because the work they do does make a meaningful difference in Lucan Biddulph, and we are thankful for the vital role that they play in keeping our community safe. So tonight we have no additions to the agenda, no closed session, but we do have to go into a public meeting and sit as the court of revision. So I would ask for a mover and a seconder that we adjourn council at 6 minutes after 6. To sit as the court of revision under Section 97 of the Drainage Act as amended to consider the Mitchell and O'Shea Drain 2026, and that Mayor Kathy Burkhart Jeffson be appointed as chair. If I can have a mover and a seconder, Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan. All in favor? And that's carried. So we can be considered to be sitting under as the court. And Jeff, I'll turn it over to you at this time.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So we have had the meeting for consideration, and this is the next step in the process. The Court of Revision is allowed property owners to challenge their assessments that are leveled under the drainage report. I have not been contacted prior to the meeting with anybody appealing the bring an appeal to the Court of Revision. And I was talking to Spreetz, and Associates, the engineer on the drain, and they have not received anything as of today.
Okay, so with that in mind, I would ask the members if you have any questions on what is in front of us. Okay, Then those can, I guess, be considered our deliberations. We do have a recommended motion in front of us that the Court of Revision, having met on behalf of the Mitchell and O'Shea Drain 2026, does hereby adopt the revised drainage assessment schedule dated February 12th, 2026, as submitted by Spreet Associates Limited. If I can get a mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Hodgins and Deputy Mayor Manders. All in favor of that? And that's carried. And with that, I would ask for a mover and a seconder to close the Court of Revision at 8 minutes after 6 in order to reconvene our regular council meeting. Deputy Mayor Manders and Councillor Regan. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Thanks for coming out. Quick. Enjoy your evening. Okay, with that now, we will go into, we've got 2 delegations tonight. And at this time, I would like to welcome to the meeting virtually from One Investment, Jason Hagan, the program manager, and Keith Taylor, who is the chief investment officer, to walk us through their presentation. We can see you, gentlemen. Welcome, and I will turn it over to you. Thank you for joining us.
For having it.
Ken.
And we can hear you, Keith?
I hope so.
Perfect. All right. I guess I'll share my screen. Is that okay?
Yep, that would be great.
Perfect.
Hopefully.
Okay, just let me know when you can see it.
We can see it on our end.
Perfect. Thank you very much. Excellent. Well, thank you, Mayor and Council and staff for having us here to talk a bit about One Investment, and thanks to the Treasurer and the CIO for inviting us to kind of provide this overview of prudent investment with One Investment. I'm Jason Hagan, Program Manager with One Investment, and with me is our Chief Investment Officer, Keith Taylor. I'll walk us through our remarks, and if there's any questions now or during the staff's report, Keith and I will be pleased to answer any questions you may have. So One Investment is a not-for-profit organization dedicated solely on serving the investment needs of Ontario's municipal sector. We are owned by 2 organizations you'll be very familiar with. One is LAS, which is AMO's business services arm, and the other is CHUMS, which is a subsidiary of the Municipal Finance Officers Association. So we are a not-for-profit owned by 2 not-for-profits. We've operated for a long time. You may have heard of us in the past, since 1993, offering investment opportunities under the Municipal Act and the Legal List Investment Regulation. We incorporated in 2018 to become an entity unto itself, and that was to secure an Ontario Securities Commission exemption to be able to provide investment advice through our Chief Investment Officer to municipalities. So how do we do? There are currently about 200 municipalities and broader public sector entities that invest with One. It's about 40% of municipalities. And then of those, 21 municipalities also leverage us for prudent investment, which I'll touch on throughout this presentation. So under the Municipal Act, there's 2 streams of investment. There is Ontario Regulation 43897, which is effectively a legal list. It says what a municipality can invest in. And if what you want to invest in is not listed, it's not allowed. The regulation gets updated about every 5 years. It does not keep up with capital market evolution. It is all Canadian, which is a great thing for our nationalism and our patriotism. It is not the greatest thing for investment structure, though, because the Canadian markets have a bit of a weighting in certain sectors. It is all very highly credit rated, though. We're here to talk about prudent investment, which the Municipal Act changed in 2019 to allow municipalities to invest as a prudent person would invest. And that's the way we invest as individuals. or any boards and commissions we may sit on, how they would typically invest. Prudent investment allows for investment in any security, regardless of whether it's Canadian or not. And so that's what we'll touch on today, is this evolution in the Municipal Act to allow for the opportunity to leverage prudent investment following certain conditions. But on the legal list side, just before we pivot to that, One Investment, as I said, has been doing this work for about 30 years. We have everything from high interest savings accounts, so bank accounts. Then we have bond and government bond portfolios and Canadian equity portfolio. These entities or these products are all guaranteed to be compliant with the Municipal Act and the eligible investment rules on the legal list side, and can certainly help your municipality with their short and long-term investments. But going further afield to that, what would be the purpose of prudent investment that staff is proposing to you today in their staff report? This picture kind of tells you the story. Legal list, small subset of the market; prudent investment, the rest of the market. So why a prudent investor, or why consider this? Increase in available investment products, better diversification within your portfolio. There are parts of the Act that require independent expertise. So you have access to subject matter expertise, fiduciary oversight from an independent investment board, better opportunity for better risk-adjusted returns over the longer term, and the ability to depoliticize municipal investments. The Act requires, as I'll say, certain of independence in this investment piece. So it kind of takes investments off of the side of the treasurer's desk and puts them right in the forefront of the work that the investment board would do. So under the Municipal Act, there are some specific requirements that were put in place in 2019 related to prudent investment. The Act requires that a municipality exercise care, skill, diligence, and judgment that a prudent investor would use. There is a duty to obtain advice. Municipalities have to consider their investment planning criteria. So that is the idea of what is short term versus what is long term. What do we need for our capital asset plan, et cetera, that type of thing. There's a requirement to diversify to an extent that is appropriate. So again, that's not putting all your eggs in one basket, to use an old term. And then further to those details, the regulation of the Municipal Act speaks a little more specifically, and it says that a municipality must invest their long-term money, if they choose to be a prudent investor, via an independent investment board or a joint investment board. So investment boards, municipalities can create one on their own if they meet certain criteria, one of which is $100,000 in assets. For most municipalities, that is not the case. So they can leverage a joint investment board, of which One Investment offers one to the sector. In terms of the independent investment boards, there's Barrie, Toronto, and Ottawa that have done their own. The rest of municipalities have not become prudent investors or have leveraged One Investment and our joint investment board. So as of last week, we had 4 new additions to our joint investment board, and that brings us to a total of 21 municipalities. Some of the bigger ones being Muskoka, the region of Durham. Then you have the town of Whitby, city of Thunder Bay, et cetera. And then we have a number of smaller municipalities, some close to you, the town of Elmer. And really what this tells you is that it's not how much money a municipality brings to the table, it's whether or not they have a long-term investment objective. And if they do, that's where we can certainly support them. And again, so the one joint investment board acts independently as a board of every investor when we consider their investment plans. So just to peel it back a little tiny bit, we are not talking about an independent investment board for all of the municipality's money. The Municipal Act says that care and control of investments remains with the treasurer, except money not required immediately. And I'm paraphrasing, it's not exactly that wording in the Act. Money not required immediately is long-term investments. And the Act says that if you become a prudent investor, long-term investments must be with the independent investment board. So that term, money not required immediately, is flexible. It's defined by the council as part of your investment policy if you became a prudent investor. And so it could be anything greater than 2 years out or 3 years out. And then we, as the investment board, work with the treasurer to determine how much money that actually is that's long term. It's your call, it's your objective. We're just there to support you. Anything outside of that MNRI definition, so short-term investments, remains with the treasurer and under their control under the Municipal Act and the legal list rules. So that would be your bank accounts, short-term GICs, things of that sort. Now, to kind of wrap it all up, so what does it all mean? So again, your treasurer does the work they do day to day to manage your investments. What happens in this model is if the municipality, simple example, said everything beyond 3 years and in duration, and that means about $1 million for us is our long-term investment. We want to become a prudent investor. Then what the municipality has to do is pass a bylaw to give effect to that. And then we have the template for the bylaws and the reports, et cetera. And then you have to put in place a new investment policy that says, what are the guardrails on those long-term investments? So that's the municipality's objective. Once that policy is in place, you direct staff to work with us to put in place the investment plan, which we build and Keith works with our partners on. And that is the investment plan for the $1 million, hypothetically, of money not required immediately. It's our job the joint investment board's job to oversee the investments. It's the investment manager's job to do the investments, and we report back to the municipality. Who does our investments? We leverage RBC Global Asset Management. Their institutional arm is called PH&N Institutional. We selected them through a competitive RFP process. And what they're able to do for us is for our prudent investor municipalities is we have access to 35 funds that we've pre-approved for use in any of the prudent investment portfolios we offer. Most municipalities have about 10 investment funds in their portfolio, and they come across a range of asset types. So here is an example of just what a prudent investment portfolio looks like. We have anything from portfolio across the top A to G. A is 100% fixed income, no equity, but it's globally diversified fixed income. At the far end is G. That's 30% fixed income and 70% equities, again, globally diversified. What happens once the investment policy is done for the municipality is Keith and our partners at PH&N Institutional and our colleague Jennifer Hess, who's our manager of investment services, works with your treasurer and your staff to figure out how long-term is that money? How sticky is the money? Do you need it in 3 years or 10 years? And that will determine what investment model portfolio we choose for the municipality. And it would be one of these A to G or the plus ones on the right, which include a little bit of alternative investments as well. But at the end of the day, it's a diversified portfolio set up for your municipal objectives based on the information we gather. So last slide, what does it all look like? If you're an investor back in 2006 and you invested in a diversified legal list bond portfolio, so government bonds and corporate bonds, that's the bottom light blue line, you would have made about 3.1% annualized over 20 years. If you had a same portfolio, 100% fixed income, but in prudent investments, so you've gone beyond Canada, a little more diversified, you would have returned 4.25%. So you would have had about $224,000 in this example. And if you had Model E Plus, which has 50% equities and has some alternative investments, over that 20-year period, you'd have returned about 7.38% and you'd have about $406,000. So we're not here to say that prudent investment will make you more in the short term. It's better risk-adjusted returns over the longer term of your portfolio. So with that, happy to take any questions or to support any staff discussion.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Appreciate all the background on this. So I look to council for questions. Deputy Mayor Manders.
Yeah, good presentation. Thank you. I just wonder, is there any minimum charge or minimum investment? Sorry if you did say that in your presentation for a cost. So minimum amount to put in And is there a cost just being a member?
So I can answer that, and Keith can offer any color commentary. There is no minimum. It just has to be worth staff's time to take the step to become a prudent investor. So we do have a couple of municipalities that are in the $1 million range, and then we have some that are significantly more than that. If staff sees that there's a longer term investment opportunity, there are longer term or stickier monies that are around, and you want to do more with them, we're happy to support it.
And then, sorry, and what about just fees in general on accounts? Does it vary depending on accounts or?
I'll jump in there. Yeah, the fees are entirely dependent on what you're invested in. So if there's a higher equity allocation, for example, there would be slightly higher fees. The fees that are charged are very reasonable for institutional clients. There's the advantage of having some scale involved. If you have more money, you get a more preferential fees. And the fees that are charged by one investment include the fees that go for the investment manager and to buy their pooled funds, and the investment side that they provide. And there's also some fees charged by one investment to cover the cost of running the one investment board. The fees are very competitive.
So to that, if you were on our legalist side and you were investing in our corporate bond or our Canadian equity portfolio, these fees are comparable to that. So we created the new option with as good of fees, or as the municipality gets bigger, there's fee tapers that actually make the fees a bit cheaper as well too.
And I guess just one comment just to our staff and our council, just I guess, I think this is interesting. Probably walk before we run on it, but certainly interesting. But the one thing that's really changed for smaller municipalities are development charges are now delayed. Excuse me. Now with the delay of occupancy and that revenue, we just simply don't have the money we had. And I think it's going to take probably 2 full years to see some consistency there of revenue coming in and having cash sitting there in our DCs that we, this year, realistically, we probably won't. But again, that's just a comment, nothing really to do with investments. Thank you.
Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The question, my question is just for our CAO. Do we have a current policy, investment policy? And has it been working?
So through the mayor, we do not have a current investment policy.
So if I may, so this would be something that now is mandated?
So through the mayor, it's not mandated, it's an option. And that's what I think Jason and Keith are trying to explain, what that option means. There is some inherent risk in doing this. Under the present system, we are sort of the legal list, I guess, is what Jason and Keith's presentation said. So we're limited to what the bank provides, high interest savings loan. They're all guaranteed investments.
Mm-hmm.
You're never going to lose. But the problem, as they've shown over the long term, the potential is to get more interest money, and obviously to create more revenue is a positive for the taxpayer. That means the less taxes we have to collect. So,
all right. Thank you, Ron. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. I was also going to ask about the fees. So thanks for those comments and the question from Deputy Mayor. You said they're reasonable and they're competitive. Are they, like, because it's a nonprofit, are the fees really like nominal compared to what you would see from a private institution then? Or like, are they, I don't know, is there a number that can be provided, or like, are they much lower than what you'd see from a financial institution that's not a not-for-profit?
Yeah, I can offer a comment on our fees, and Keith can give you kind of, I would guess, a relative nature from the private sector. We don't want to point anyone out, but for an investor with $1 million or $2 in prudent investment, for governance and investment fees, the fee would be in the range of the low 40 basis points, so 0.4% annualized, or a couple of basis points more than that. And then how that compares to the retail markets, Keith, you can probably comment better than I.
Well, this is just the thing. The investment groups from the Canadian banks and other financial institutions. I'll just say that our fee structure is quite competitive, and I think that's there's always a great deal of focus on the fees, but you don't want to lose sight of the opportunity. Quite simply put, if you stay under the legal list, what you invest in it was not going to be quite as productive and is unlikely to give you the same level of returns and diversification that you can get if you join a prudent investor. So the fees are reasonable, but really that shouldn't be the deciding factor. It's really just a box you need to check to make sure that you feel comfortable with it. But I would focus more on the fact that the type of investments you will get into provide a better opportunity for long-term growth of the monies that you don't immediately need.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Second question, if I may. Looking at those approved model portfolios on slide 11, going from A to G, I think you mentioned that you would work with your investment manager would work with staff to select the right portfolio. So is that something that's typically it's not decided by council, or would the risk tolerance be established in the investment policy, or how do we sort of, land on whichever portfolio, exactly how that works?
Under prudent investor, the investment decision making is carried out by the joint investment board or an investment board as the case may be. And we would I would be making the recommendation based on conversations with staff and an understanding of their circumstances. Usually we would look for some information about the investment horizon involved. If you don't need your money for 10 years or so, the investment recommendation we're going to give you would be very different than if you needed the money in 5 years. And so we do try to get a feel of the municipal circumstances, the need for money, and risk tolerance is kind of baked in there. But that's an evaluation done on our side based on what we know of your circumstances. And the ultimate decision making is done by the joint investment board.
Yeah. If I can just add to that, I totally agree with what Keith's saying. But when Keith says, if your money's not needed for 10 years, the recommendation's different than if it's needed in 5. The funds are never locked in. The intention is that you're only providing the joint investment board with longer term funds. But if the example I always use is if the bridge on Main Street falls in the water, no one expected that to happen. It wasn't part of your asset management plan. And if you need a real $1 million, you let us know and it's your money. But we're always going to invest it appropriately given the time horizon that Keith and the investment team are made aware of by staff and through the municipal client questionnaires and through your investment policy. But if you need it, it's yours and it can always be pulled back.
Okay, thank you. And just one last question. Just looking at the size of the one joint investment board of $2.8 billion in funds, and is it made up of more than those 21 municipalities then? Like there's other partners in that? Because I just kind of did the math on that and I thought it worked out to 138 million for each. And there's a lot of small municipalities. I'm just wondering where all that money is coming from, unless there's some really big municipalities in there that I'm missing, like Durham or the other ones that have significant amount in there. Is that correct?
Yes, there's 5 significantly large ones, and then a large number of medium-sized ones, and then some small ones. But a couple of the large ones are very large.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Madam Mayor.
Okay, any other questions at this point? Yeah, Councillor Regan?
Something I just thought of that. So hypothetically, if the bridge collapses and we have to pull the money, what's the penalty?
There is no penalty.
None?
It is your money. It is invested. The only possible downside is if the markets are not behaving, so to speak, they go up and down. There is some financial risk involved. There's a possibility that you're drawing the money down when the markets are not on their best foot.
Right.
So that's why we lock in we try to tie the investment horizon. So having a little bit more risk gives you much better returns over the long term, and that's how we do it. But that would be the risk. And if we know that there's potential drawdowns near term, that would be factored into the decision making on the allocation.
Yeah, just to add to that, it's not a one-time decision. Council does an investment policy, we build an investment plan, talking to staff, and we do it, and that's the last time we talk. We have an annual review requirement built into our prudent investment program. So Keith, PH&N, and our investment team are chatting with the treasurer every year at a minimum to say what's changed, what's happening, let's redo your client questionnaire. Oh, the bridge on Main Street's asset quality has gone down. Oh, that's a real concern in the next 5 years. And Keith might say, well, it sounds like we should shift the portfolio a bit. It sounds like you may need money back sooner than you thought. So that's an annual discussion we have.
The other thing that is actually relevant here is that you're not giving us all your money. You're identifying only the long term. And it's quite possible you may have some money in hand for your short-term money for some contingencies. So we kind of prefer the money that we're managing to be rather sticky without the probability of it being needed. And you determine what that long-term money is, the amount, or how you define it.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you for bringing up the bridge, because one of my questions was in the need that if we needed access to funds quickly, how would that happen? I'm going to choke. Hold on.
Maybe I can start answering the question while you recover. We actually had this happen with well, we've had a couple of times when the circumstances have changed and money was required by the municipality. One was Quinte West, where there was some planning horizon where they were projecting that they needed to take money out because of changing circumstances. Another one was Aurora. And I guess it was a year ago, maybe two, there was a postal strike, which meant that they weren't receiving the checks by mail that they expected, and they were not flush with cash, and they made arrangements with us to basically draw down some money that was invested with us. So they had the flexibility for these shorter term liquidity needs. And in that case, it was a matter of the treasurer reaching out, some correspondence between them and myself, looping in the chair of the JIB, and this was dealt with in relatively short order. Again, the message is it's your money. This is your community's money, and we want to be as flexible as possible and facilitate whatever the needs are.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. I had a couple of other questions, and these ones mostly have to do, with governance and where the responsibility lays. And I think that you have indicated, it's up to council to come up with the investment policy. But, what are the ongoing responsibilities like between council and then this joint investment board?
Well, one thing is, if your circumstances materially change, you should inform us. Sending us a letter to say that something is up and there's a need for a drawdown or change in circumstances. We can only do as good as as the information we have. There is an annual review of the investment policy statements, so there's an opportunity to review and revise. As appropriate, the treasurer will inform us of the specifics of financial circumstances or whatever the planning needs are. But yeah, that's the basic structure. And as there's a need for an update during the year, the treasurer can reach out. But there needs to be an annual review and update, which means a review of the investment policy statement, an update from the treasurer of the circumstances, and then I would write a new investment plan to either reiterate what was already in place or make changes if the circumstances have changed.
Yeah, just to build on that, Keith nailed it all. But at the front end, the biggest work for council per se is deciding you wish to become a prudent investor, receiving the bylaw to that effect, and then supporting staff in the investment policy that they would put together with our support. And then once that's all done, then the work really becomes between staff and Keith and PH&N to give effect to the policy through the investment plan. So you're an annual cycle of that review of the investment policy. And some years, if fiscal circumstances haven't changed, the treasurer may say, hey, our policy is appropriate. We've had our meetings with the one investment team. We see no changes. Our investment policy is pretty good. And council can just receive the update, and that would be considered the review under the act.
Okay, all right. Okay, understand that. In one of the slides, you had indicated as part of the investment policy that we have a duty to obtain advice. And so is that third-party advice aside from one investment? Or is it that if we're receiving advice from you, that is considered advice?
Correct. The latter.
Okay. And then, so we've talked about, if the bridge fails and we need cash, but in the event that, that there's a global downturn or a major flux in investment, and understanding that, you ride these things out, but, we've highlighted, these are, taxpayer dollars, these are dollars. Is there anything that is ever done, or I guess, at what point would corrective action maybe be brought to the table? Or would a discussion happen with the treasurer and then council that maybe we need to look at things differently?
This circles back to risk tolerance and what you do when the markets aren't behaving. We have the one jib is not it does not endorse being tactical and trying to second guess what the market is going to do. Even the most astute professional investors get those calls wrong on a regular basis. And we are all human beings and we're governed by emotions. It's the analogy would be when the fire is hot, you want to take your hand away. But that's the exact opposite of what you typically want to do with investments. I'll give you an example if you don't mind. In 2020, we had the COVID crisis, and we had a number of municipalities that had legacy funds. And we assigned a specific investment allocation because we thought that was appropriate for their risk profile. And during the crisis, over a 2-week period of time, the equity markets just tanked. And the unfortunate reality is because the value of the investments went down, these legacy funds had too little risk in their investment portfolio. So we called them up and said, you need to buy more equities because you're out of line. Of course, the markets bounced back, and 3 to 4 months later, they ended up with too much equity in their portfolio or too much risk based on their investment policy statement. So we told them to sell, locking in gains. And this isn't exactly the way it works at the one jib, but the model portfolios do have target allocations, and we'll call it goalposts. So if the markets do gyrate because of short-term news or events, and the allocation is misaligned with what was recommended in the investment plan, they will be rebalanced back to target. But there's not going to be someone sitting on top saying, I don't know, I'm scared, I don't want to do it, I'm going to delay it. It is more reactionary and basically it's well defined, and it's not an emotional decision.
Yeah, to build on that, the funds, the 35 that I said are available to us, they're not our funds. They're RBC Global Asset Management funds or PH&N funds. So they have many more investors in them than just one investment. And the each portfolio has their own investment management team, and they're making decisions daily related to portfolio holdings and in response to markets, as Keith noted, or looking at target allocations and things like that. So the reality is that even in a down market, the investment policy that you endorse as a council still informs the investment plan and still guides the work that we do until the time where fiscal circumstances change at the municipality or it's time for the annual review.
Very good. And then who makes up the joint investment board? What is the criteria for being a member of that board?
Want to get that one, Keith, or you got it?
I'll let you go ahead and take this one.
So 12-member board, 3 municipal treasurers who are treasurers of participating municipalities. So they reflect a number of different perspectives of skill sets. One is a treasurer and a CAO as well. And then 9 financial experts. So 2 are retired municipal CFOs. The other 7 are all CFA charter holders, active or have been active in the investment industry. So it is a skills-based board where every time we have a vacancy, we look at our skills matrix and we look to fill the skills that we're missing, and we do through a competitive process.
Okay, and then just finally, I mean, I'm looking at the slide 7 when you're listing the different municipalities that are members. So how can we be assured that there's independence amongst municipalities, that there's no conflicts of interest, that, you know, Lucan Biddulph's portfolio or investment policy, however we want to frame that, that's independent of, you know, Canora's?
Do you want that, Keith?
Well, I guess I'll start and you can finish. When you manage other people's money, there's a fiduciary duty involved. We have exemptions from the OSC that would govern this type of activity on the expectation that we would fulfill what obligations would be appropriate for a licensed portfolio manager. We have a professional board, the majority of which have CFAs and a full career of investment experience. And it's their job to ensure that you know, there's fair treatment and that everyone is treated in the way that is appropriate. So the standard is kind of built in, and also because I can't speak for the for all the board members, but those that are CFAs to uphold their CFA designation, they need to be cognizant of these fiduciary duties.
Yeah. And then I think Keith touched on it quite nicely. I've just add to that to say that all activities of the one joint investment board are fully transparent. You can go to the One Investment website. You can click on the One Joint Investment Board. You can see the agenda. You can see every report, just like a council meeting, and you can actually watch the meeting either live or on pre-recorded. So the only times we have a discussion that the public does not see is if we're able to close a meeting under Section 239 of the Municipal Act, because the One Joint Investment Board acts as a municipal services board for every investor that we work with.
It
So
should
we
also be noted.
we act as your board effectively.
It should also be noted that we have regular meetings for all the municipalities involved with the one JIB to update them on matters and keep them in the loop. So there is a forum to talk as a group to One Investment and provide some feedback.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate your time in answering our questions to this point. I will look to council one last time if there's any other things, any other items that you'd want to be brought forward to these fellows. They're going to stay on because we're going to move Catherine's report up. But if you've got any questions now, further questions? Okay, thank you very much, and I do appreciate you staying on. I think you know that we're going to bring Catherine's report up a little bit earlier, so do appreciate you adjusting your schedule for that as well.
We're
With
happy
that, I would
to help.
ask, yeah, I would ask for a mover and a seconder to receive that presentation from One Investment for information, Councillor Hodgins and Deputy Mayor Manders. All in favor? And that's carried. And at this time, welcome to the speaker's desk, Christine Scrimgeour, our auditor. And as always, it's great to see you, Christine. Happy that you're here in person. And I will turn it over to you.
All right. It's my speaker's on fine, isn't it? Okay, great. Good evening, everyone. These are the draft audited financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2025. I always start by thanking the treasurer and her staff for all their good work. This is, as you know, I do a significant number of municipal audits, and this is the first one I've done this year. So that speaks highly of your staff. So thank you for that. I'll go through it page by page as I normally do. Please don't hesitate to ask any questions, and hopefully between Catherine and myself, we will be able to answer your questions. So the first 2 pages are my independent auditor's report stating that I am independent for the municipality, as well as it is what we call in the audit world a clean opinion, meaning I did not find anything materially incorrect in the financial statements dated as of today's date, which those charged with governance, which will be this council, need to approve the statements, and then we can finalize them. The next step then is to complete, with your staff's help, the FIR, which is required by the province. All right, so we'll get into the numbers. The first statement is a consolidated statement of financial position. And I'll just go down and highlight some changes between the 2 years, and then some comments on some of the numbers as well. So as you know, I always go down to the net financial asset line, which is really what you would have in the bank at the end of the day if everybody paid you what they owed you, and you'd pay off your obligations, which obviously you're not going to pay all your long-term debt in any 1 year, but that's increased about 1.6 million. So some good financial stability there. And really that's a couple of reasons. One is, as you remember, at the end of last year, so the end of 2024, we were still in the process of completing the soccer field. So you'll see in accounts receivable, we had almost $4.5 million sitting there. That has come down significantly, and that's because we got those debenture proceeds, and that has now fully debentured. And so that obviously put money in our bank at that point in time. I will comment on a couple other numbers. The land held for resale, it's a smaller number on the balance sheet, but it is now. It was the land beside in that industrial park that's beside the Public Works building that we're retaining as for possible future municipal purposes. And so we've now brought that into our tangible capital asset inventory. So that line will disappear next year. So that's what I had to say on the financial assets. Under the liabilities, accounts payable, again, just items that we pay after the year end for things that relate back to 2025. Deferred revenue, I did see a comment or a question on this, so I'll just explain it. So this is not an accounts payable, it's deferred revenue. So that means it's monies that we've received. The majority of it is either DCs, OCIF funding, or the CCBF, which is the old gas tax funding. And those monies, we received that revenue, but we have not yet met the requirements to spend that money. And so it's called deferred revenue. So it will be spent in future years, but we cannot spend it. It's not a reserve fund. So you have reserve funds, but those are under the direction of council. These are under the direction of the various organizations that have given you that money, and they can only be spent that way. So that's why they're treated a little different than the other reserve funds. So deferred revenue, not accounts payable in that situation. And then the net long-term liabilities, 8.3 million. So it's been a busy time, as you all aware, for the municipality over the last few years. We are now fully, all the capital projects to this date are now fully funded through debt. And obviously get started with this wonderful building and the daycare, and then we've added the arena addition, the soccer fields, and the pool addition. So all of that is included in that 8.3 million. So coming down to the net financial assets, as I mentioned, increased by 1.6 million. And I would anticipate that will continue to increase. I know that we do have one very significant project on the horizon that's been started. And so we'll talk about that in a minute as well. But from the general fund perspective, I would anticipate that that would increase. Under that is the non-financial assets. So those are all the assets that you need to have in place in order to provide the services. Obviously, you can't turn around and sell a road or an arena. And so always looking, as I talk about each year, making sure that you're reinvesting in your capital assets. And so if you take the tangible capital asset number plus the capital works in progress, so those are just projects that are ongoing over the year end, you'll see that we've increased a net increase of 2 million, but amortization was 2.5 million. So really we've increased our assets by 4.5 million, which is a significant new investment in capital with still paying off our debt. And when we get to the note to the financial statement on the surplus, still maintaining healthy reserves. Coming down to that accumulated surplus at the end of the year of 65 million versus 62 million. Again, I'm rounding there. And that increase carried forward really from the tangible capital assets and the increase in the overall working capital balance. Any questions on that at all?
Yeah, just I was the one that inquired about the deferred revenue. It's just interesting that it's considered a deferred revenue is in a liability with our long-term debt. Like it's just that it's into the same bracket. Because I have been asked about our, what our debt is in Lucan Biddulph, and it is very reasonable for all our assets and all our improvements. But someone had said to me, again, if you just looked at this quickly and didn't know that, you'd maybe think that that was debt. So yeah, it's just interesting that
So it is.
Yeah.
So if you can think of it this way, it is a responsibility of the municipality to spend that money in a specific way. So you do have a obligation, which is what a liability is, to spend that money in the future years based on what those projects that are.
That's usually not a problem.
That's I'm not commenting.
Yeah. So. And that will not be an issue, but no, thank you. Yeah, thank you for explaining it.
Yeah, it's a odd term and these cause a lot of problems for a lot of people to get their mind around, but it's money that you have in your bank account that you are obligated to spend in a specific way by those specific, and like the AMO for the CCBF and province for OCIF and that kind
Well,
of.
now since sorry, you've created a question. So with that money, could that be earmarked to the investors and the investments, or does that need to be saved type thing or earmarked?
It does have a responsibility to be spent in so many years. So under each one of those agreements, there's not so much the DCs, but those are specific projects that you have to spend it on. So that would all go into your capital financing as to what you're planning to spend over the next, to give them an idea of what you would have to spend over those years. But I would suggest that would probably be left out because of the requirement with CCB. Like if you're looking at longer term investments, then you want to make sure that that's the actual that we don't have to spend it in the short term.
Or the DCs in a short term, potentially shorter term investment, if it gets us higher than our high interest rate, if they can achieve a higher rate, I believe that money's sitting in a high interest rate currently. And the gentleman can achieve a high interest rate in the legalist. Then I guess that would be, something to look at.
Yeah, but keep in mind, any interest earned on these funds increase the obligation. They don't come into your bank account to be spent by the township to reduce your tax rate. So it's not money that, so this money is growing by the amount of interest it earned plus whatever grants we get from AMO or whatever. Yeah. So the interest that's earned there is not going to benefit the ratepayer in the sense of the general tax rate.
Well, but with DCs, I just think there's a lot of projects and stuff that probably, anyways, okay.
Lots to think about.
Yeah, thanks.
No problem. All right, we'll move on to the next state, unless anybody else had any questions on the balance sheet. Nothing there, okay. We'll move on to the income statement. So this shows the revenue for the budget for 2025 as approved by council, the actual for 2025, and then the actual for 2024. And I'll do what I normally do, just kind of compare budget to actual and give you some indications as to what changes there might be there. Overall, under user charges, you'll see that's up about 300,000, but almost 200 of that is increase in recreation, different user rates there, as well as we did get a WSIB. I'm sure you're aware there's a WSIB surplus that's came back to the township both last year and this year, and it was approximately $70,000, I believe. So that's those two amounts are really the main things there. And the user charges. Investment income was up, not as much as last year. And again, a lot of that is in reserve funds, so it gets moved over to those reserve funds. Penalty and interest and taxes, and then other revenue, coming down to an overall actual of just over 12 million versus 11,399 last year. Under expenditures, I'll remind council that within the budget for 2025 is not your amortization cost, and it was 2.5 million. And so that is the big increase between overall expenditures budgeted and actual expenditures for 2025. And then in addition, obviously with all of those new recreation capital assets, so all the extra new ones, plus the additional revenue that we earned within recreation, the costs in recreation went up more than the budgeted amount. And again, that's sort of the first year of a lot of those new facilities being on board. Have better numbers now for probably the future budgets that will prepare for that. But overall, having said all that, this excess of revenue over expenditures before other, you'll see there that this is the number I really look at to see that your current revenues, so everything below this line, those revenues are one-time capital type projects that are not for operations. I'm looking at this number to make sure it stays positive. So I want to make sure that your revenues, so what you're raising through user fees and taxation dollars mainly, plus some operating grants, exceed the capital or the operating expenditures with amortization in there, because amortization is the using up of your assets. So we want to make sure that we're covering at least that money. And so you'll see it's 337 to the positive this year. And so that's what I'm looking for. And again, as we go forward, that will increase, I anticipate too, as well, with the budgeting for recreation being in line with now how much more activity there is there. Under that, the other, as I mentioned, are items that relate to capital. I'll comment on a couple of them. The government transfers related to capital. We budgeted for, this is kind of a funny line because we budgeted for a rec grant. We didn't get that rec grant, but instead we got the Housing Accelerator Fund grant of 656,000, and we started getting money for the Hughes grant for the sewer project of 745,000. So that's what's in the actuals. It was a different recreation grant that we thought we would get for some dressing room upgrades that we didn't get. So that's the difference there. Gain loss on disposal of assets, that's just the net gain. And then developer and other contributions, 1.2 million. So that's where we recognize that deferred revenue, Deputy Mayor, where I talked about that it shows up as revenue when we meet the criteria of those projects. So here is where we're showing our DCs, the gas tax that we recognized and the OCIF that we recognized. So it was 1.2 million. And again, that is always contingent on what capital projects we get finished in the year. So we obviously can only take money out of those funds up to the capital that we purchased. So all that down, and then coming down to the total increase in revenue over expenditures of 3.3 million, almost $3.4 million there. Any questions on that statement? There's a lot of numbers there, I know.
Yeah, Christine, I just had if we can go back to the user charge line.
Yes.
So that's 4.3 million. Does that includes like the users on our water and wastewater system as well? Okay,
yes.
All right. I must have zoned out there because I'm thinking 4.3 on recreation alone?
No, I was describing the increase.
No, okay, yes.
So the water and
That's what
wastewater revenues were pretty close to budget. So they were not, but I was trying to give some story to the why it was higher than budget.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. Just looking at these revenues and expenditures, it seems like there's a lot of variance between the budgeted amounts and the actual amounts. it's great that we ended up with that excess revenue over expenditures and like the final line, the important one that you mentioned. But is it okay? Like, is it okay to be, or right? Is it normal to be budgeting like the $3 million in the excess revenue over expenditures? Like, is that like a conservative approach and then it all worked out, or?
So what that is because you don't budget amortization, right? So you're not, what you're budgeting is paying for those assets. So this is this wonky, that's not a technical term, but I'm going to use it because it's hard to get your head around. So if you took the, out of that 3 million, if you took the 2.5 million out of like the amortization, the cost, you're basically down to where you ended up. So you're not over budgeting and you didn't overspend. So that a lot of people look at this and go, wow, look at the council, they overspent by $3.4 million. Oh my goodness, like what kind of council, right? That's not what's happening. It's the amortization. And you don't budget that, you budget on a cash flow basis. So you budget, okay, I'm going to go out and get that soccer field. This is how much I'm taking out of reserves. This is how much I'm taking from debt. And that's all in your budget. But in your actuals, it's the amortization it replaces that capital asset.
Thank you.
Well, I'm just going to ask you, we're not deciding tonight on how much to invest, but I am going to maybe put you on the spot. I'm just curious on what you'd recommend on, because again, I don't know even my other counselors and our staffs, long-term projects or goals, but from a short term, 1.5, 2 years out, what percentage of cash would you think would that be good to put towards an investment?
That's a tough question because I'd have to look at what asset management plan would say what capital assets you're planning to buy over the next 5 years.
That's why I figured you're going to say that, and that's why I said the next 1 to 2 years, and you don't really, if there is, we need to be smart about if we have big projects, but if it's manageable or controllable or just in general, I mean, is there a percentage?
If we go back to the balance sheet, realistically, you've got $14 million at the end of 2025 in the bank. To my knowledge, other than the sanitary sewer project, which is going to get funded through the provincial grant, plus those reserves, like those users have to pay for that, right?
Yeah.
So you have to strip that out of this because that's not that's a user pay system, right? So even though we're going to have a significant amount of money that has to go out of our pocket to finish that project, it's not coming out of the general tax rate. So I would strip out. So in this bank account is both water, wastewater. Those are not your monies to invest depending on what, but those would be ones I would strip out personally, right?
Okay.
And then you have to go from what's left there. And then you also have the 2 fire boards, but they're not obviously as significant of amounts, but there's still monies there, right? Which depending on when your next, I'm looking at the fire chief, when your next truck and apparel are coming in. That's what I would do. I would strip those kinds of things out and then see what are you left with there.
Gotcha.
And is there, you've had a very busy capital project last few years, right? I think you've got really great facilities now and you're in a really good place. So then this probably is the time that you want to look at something to earn a little bit more interest.
Yeah, accelerate the savings a bit. I agree with you on their capital.
So that's a general, I can't tell you a number, but that's how if I was looking at your stuff, that's how I would do it. I will say I do, some of the clients he mentioned, I do their audits as well. So I am very familiar with One Fund and he's giving you an accurate picture of what they do.
Well, I appreciate your input on how we should strip it back to look at putting money in. Thank you.
Keep going?
We can keep going.
Okay. I love it. I like when you ask questions. I hate when I talk and everybody just looks at me like All right, the next page is the statement of cash flows, just showing the increases and decreases of the non-cash items. I've gone over the balance sheet already, so I'll just say again, under the financing activities, this is where we're starting to pay off our debt now. So last year we were increasing our debt. We did have a little bit more debt in 2025 that we increased to finish that soccer project. It wasn't a significant amount, and then we're now starting to pay off that debt. So that's great. So net change, so we had an increase in the cash there. And that's mainly because we got the money in from that debenture. The next statement is consolidated statement of change in net financial assets. This is really a snapshot of what's going on in TCA and the tangible capital assets. There's the 2.5 million that I've just keep talking about. And then if you take the decrease in the capital work in progress, the 1.7, which is a lot of that is the soccer field coming into capital now, and then the new acquisitions, that's where I was coming up with that 4.5 of actual, and again, I'm rounding numbers, but 4.5 of new assets, which is great because it's far exceeds the 2.5 in amortization, which the theory is you just need to keep reinvesting. And again, I'll comment on amortization is on a historical cost, and so clearly what the sewer plant is costing you to extend this year is far more than what it would have cost when we originally did Lucan Sewer. And then we get to the notes to the financial statements. I don't have a lot to say on these. I will comment on a couple things that I always comment on. Note number 2 is something that everybody is not happy about. The financial statements, their format is all going to change for the year 2027. And so look forward to that. Of course, there's no actual pronouncements on exactly how that's going to look, but we'll get there. Note number 6 is the operations of the school board and county. And so I just want to comment, I always do this. In addition to all the revenue and expenses you just saw in the income statement we went through, there's another $5.6 million, $5.4 million that go through these offices on behalf of the county and school boards that your staff are responsible for. Note number 7 is the township share of the OMERS contributions. Note number 8 is your deferred revenue. So this is the breakdown of the deferred revenue. Development charges, Community Canada Building Fund. We have used up OCIF, and the deferred revenue are just, we get some donations in that are for specific purposes. And if we haven't spent those, we defer those revenues again, because donors have given us that money for a specific purpose. Long-term liabilities, I went through that already. And you can see the debt retirement over the next 5 years. And again, that all comes from taxation dollars because they're all the whole, they're not water, wastewater. Note number 10 is probably the note you're most interested in. So this is a breakdown of your tangible capital assets. So you remember when I was talking, I talked about the reserves are still at a healthy level. And you can see there that we're up about almost $1.5 million in overall reserves. And then the capital for fire departments. And again, I have, this is only your share of the BB fire board. And so this is what, there's actually more in the fire board as such, but this is just your share because we eliminate the 49%. And we move the surplus into the tax rate stabilization as was minuted by council. And that's the increase there between the 525,000 last year, 869,000 this year. That's both the amount you budgeted in the actual original budget. You budgeted about 110,000, I think it was. And then we have 225,000 of actual surplus on the top of that. So all of that was moved over to the tax rate stabilization, as I said, was minuted by council. And then the last thing I wanted to draw attention to is note number 16. So this is the new note this year, just basically talking about because of the significance of your project. I was at another municipality today that has a significant water wastewater requirement as well. And they were quite jealous of the fact that you got this because they didn't get any.
I think everybody is.
Yeah. More congratulations on that. And then the last 2 schedules, the first one is the breakdown of the tangible capital assets by component. So this is just something that gives you some added information on that. I will comment on the disposal because it looks like you disposed of 2.5 million, I think it is. Sorry, I'm looking up my page cut off. But anyway, that's the Whalen line because we got it out of our books because it's no longer, it's the county's. So just so you know that, and then if anyone, when you look back at this, you go, what was that? And then the last schedule is your segue into the FIR that we file, and this is broken down by the various functions that the FIR is broken down by. So this just helps us get that all balanced and as a required disclosure. And that is my report, unless anybody has any questions.
Okay, thank you, Christine. Does anybody have any questions at this stage? No, I've got two, but do you have, okay, Councillor Hodgins, you can go before me.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just briefly, I think just hearing your presentation and seeing the numbers here, it's always a little bit hard for me to interpret this, and I think maybe some others as well. But I think, you know, it sounds positive, and I think, you know, you say our reserves are healthy. Obviously, the grant funding is great news. And you know, you do this work for a lot of municipalities. So I think we talked about this last year too when you came into this presentation. Overall, you know, things are looking pretty good, I think, financially. Maybe just overall, how do things look for us?
Yeah, and
financially?
it's the same story for everybody. The grants are drawing. I mean, yes, you got that great grant, but there's a lot of other needs besides just a sewer system and what things cost in today's dollars. So, you know, fortunately, most of your buildings and things are relatively new. And so you're not going to have those huge expenditures, but you will at some point. And so saving for those, so continue to build your reserves. Like, you know, it's not always I'll say sexy topic when you're setting a budget, especially in an election year. I'm gonna say that. And so, but you need to keep building those reserves because things just cost. I mean, anything petroleum-based, parking lots, like anything like that are just crazy. So just keep building there and making sure that in your budget, when you're budgeting your tax rate, that you include those replenishing the reserves that you take money out of for public works, for whatever, to allow for those future projects.
Okay, thank you for those words of wisdom.
Okay, Christine, there were just two things that I just wanted you to just either reinforce or help me with. In note number 5, you reference a trust fund in the amount of $1,300. What is that trust fund for? And where is the history of it? I think we probably talk about it every year, but what is the history of that trust fund?
It's an ORP loan, an old ORP loan that is attached to one of the properties that is still collectible as such. And so there isn't even a provincial, so it's a provincial program that was in place. Oh my goodness, it must be 20, I don't know, I'm dating myself here. Yeah, thank you. But it was grandfathered out. And so, but there's still loans that are attached to properties. And so this is just still one loan. It's one loan. So we've tried to approach the province and ask them to let us just write it off and bring the money into the township. But until we get approval to do that, a trust fund is by law separate from the municipality, right? And you as council can't have anything to do. So we need approval from the person that set the trust up to dissolve the trust.
And through you, Madam Mayor, the auditor is exactly right. Thank you. And it is attached to one property. There is a dispute about when the monthly payments were supposed to stop. And the amount that's in question is such a small amount that it is not worth the township's time to take it to a lawyer. It's attached to the property.
Some point it
When the
could be
property
paid.
gets sold, which it will ultimately be sold, we will get our money at that point in time. So I'm not concerned about getting the money. We will eventually get it.
Okay, and then just on note 8, the deferred revenue, just on the OSIF line.
Yes.
So there's nothing for 2025, but do we not receive OSIF funding every year? But because we spent it and we spent it all, it doesn't need to show as a dollar value on that.
Exactly. So typically we carry over projects because projects don't get finished. Whatever project, I can't honestly remember off the top of my head, but this project was finished. We fully funded it. The money's gone, and we accrue interest on all of these not the deferred revenue, but the development charges, obviously, community and the CCBF. We accrue interest, and even that interest has been spent as well as it should have.
Okay, thank you for that. And then I would just again ask council for any questions. I certainly had the same sort of questions that the deputy mayor had about your thoughts on the one investment. And if you put on your advice hat. So I appreciate what you were able to offer to the deputy mayor because that was in line with my questions. But certainly if there's any other questions from council at this time. Nope. Okay.
Can I say one more
Yes,
thing?
yes, you can.
Thank you to the mayor. I understand this may be my last council meeting with you, so I just really appreciate all your help and support over the years, and I will miss you. It's been great.
That's not fair.
You may have a few of these
Yeah.
going forward. So anyway, thank you. I appreciate all your support.
Yeah, no, appreciate that, Christine. It's been great working with you, and I know that our staff certainly appreciates everything that you do to support them. And certainly I will say the same thing. Always enjoy working with you, and I will miss that.
Thanks.
With that, I would ask for a mover and a seconder to accept the draft financial statements as presented. The deputy mayor and Councillor Reagan. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, we are going to move Catherine's report up. The staff report 7.2A, which was, I think it was something else at that point, 9. Anyways, it has to do with the one investment report. So our friends from One Investment have stayed. Christine is here as well. And so Catherine, I will turn it over to you at this time.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, so the report I have in front of you provides a bit more information or more detail in addition to what Jason and Keith had talked about. I don't know really much more I have to say. A lot of information is in there. They did talk about the difference between legal list versus prudent investment and the different risks and the next steps involved and the importance of diversification, all those good things. So currently, we only have we don't have any GICs or that sort of thing or other investments. We have our bank account, which is like a high interest savings account. It is prime minus 1.8%. So effectively that 2.65% we're earning. So the ask of what council decides if we want to, you've heard a lot of information about investments. Is this now a good time to go down that road? And so like council decide if you like, should we move to prudent investment and using the services of One Investment? I think there's definitely benefits of going with One Investment. Like they have the expertise there that we don't have a staff level here to do and manage those kinds of things as prudent as we should. So that is a benefit of going with One Investment. So if council wants to explore what investments could be and maybe earning some more money on some money that's not required immediately, then this is their best option at this point. I know we'll have some work to do to come up with what that looks like, what that definition is. That's something that as staff and also under the guidance or assistance from One Investment folks as well. And then bring that to council, and then the council has the ultimate decision on whether or not to accept that bylaw and that policy and all those good things. So with that, I don't think I have much more to add. You've heard all the information about it. If you have any further questions, all the experts are here, I hope. So I just ask for council to make a decision, either if you want to move forward now, or if there's something, a lot of information, if you need to defer, I don't know, that's something you can discuss.
Okay, thank you very much, Catherine. So I would look to council to open up the discussion. Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. I think it looks great. I think this is it is the best option to move forward. Yeah, I think One Investment seems like a great avenue to be doing our investments. So I'm certainly supportive of moving forward, and it's also great that we can get the support in taking these next steps, and that they can assist with that. And I just had maybe one or two questions. So I wanted to ask, and maybe we don't know yet, but I wanted to see if we have a sense of how much of the money not required immediately, is that what it was? MNRA. How, if we have an idea of like ballpark where we might, or how much funds we may have available.
So that's some of the homework that I have to do. I have been, you saw in the financial statements report, all like where our reserves are sitting at. Is there some flexibility there? I don't, like if it's $1 million or if it doesn't, there's no minimum. If we want to start out and say, like if we're looking at like 500,000 or something like that, but I think we have to do a look at what projects are out there. What is money not required immediately? Is it what we need in 2 years, 3 years? Something, that's the definition. So with the assistants, we're gonna have a more wholesome look at what that looks like and what is we're comfortable, what is that MNRI number look like? I don't think it's, and if it's not, it's a big number. I don't know. I don't think it's like for us, it's a big number, I suppose, but in the grand scheme of things, others it might be small. But like they said, there's no minimum. We can start small, but it depends on what that looks like, what we don't need. If it's looking at our cash flows and all that, and our capital project plan and all those things that have to be considered. So that's the homework we have to do before the next presentation, I believe.
So through you, Madam Mayor, I was just going to add, so this, if you think of this as in stages, this is the first stage. So does council feel comfortable moving forward with this type of investment through one investment? So that's, and once we get a decision on that, then we move to the next step. Then Catherine's going to sit down as a treasurer with the one investment people, probably Keith, and compare, like she said, what do we need? Or what do we expect in the next 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, and compare that to our asset management plan. And what do we know? We know that there's going to be a push for a second ice pad. When does that happen? What, you sort of set the chart up and where do you plug that in? We know there's going to be fire capital costs coming up. Where in the chart do we put that in? And then you can sort of develop a scenario where you can see where you need your money and how that can be accommodated through this one investment.
Okay, thank you. No, that's so it sounds like, yeah, we still have to take some steps before we know exactly what that is. So fair enough. But I just wanted to ask then about next steps, and you kind of already answered that a little bit, but maybe the gentleman from One Investment might know just from their experience setting up other municipalities. Like, are we talking a couple months to get this set up, and maybe what how do you support the municipality in setting up the investment policy, and what other supports are available?
Excellent. I can offer some comments and then Keith can just add some color commentary there. Really, we can work at the pace that you want to work at as a staff team. This is your consideration report. Following that would be a report that we would help staff with, that would include the bylaw to say we wish to become a prudent investor, which is required under the Municipal Act. Then we would help staff with their investment policy statement, which would be a part of that second report that they would bring back to council. Following that, it's really Keith and PHN and our investment team that would work with Catherine and Ron to figure out what that money not required immediately amount looks like based on, as Ron said, the spreadsheets, and just kind of figuring out what's up next and when. And then we have quarterly meetings of our joint investment board. Then the earliest one you might perhaps make is November, the end of November. After that would be the end of January. So again, we meet quarterly, and that's where we consider new enrollments to the joint investment board, and that's where Keith would propose the investment plan, and the joint investment board would accept it or send it back for further edits.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you. Just closing my comments. I'm fully supportive of this, and look forward to move ahead with it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Hodgins. Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I was just, when I'm reading through Catherine's report, it says that, the township doesn't have any legal list holdings other than a bank account, which is an interest rate of 2.65%. And the next thing it talks about is that the legal list is very conservative, secure, but it's restrictive and can result in lower returns over the longer term, which may not keep pace with inflation. So that has me a little concerned about how is that to our advantage? Unless I'm misreading it or misunderstanding, it just seems that it's too restrictive. So we have an account now that's getting 2.65. How do we know that? And with the restrictive nature of that list, how do we know we're going to be making any more money? And how is that an advantage to our township?
So through the mayor, maybe I'll take a stab at this one first. So we are basically handcuffed in accordance with the legal list of investments at the present time. So what we're trying to do through the treasurer's report today is expand that list and take advantage of the one investment opportunity to make more than what we would through the legal list. So, but you have to remember there is a certain amount of risk that you're accepting when you go with the one investment board. Okay, it's really no different than your own personal finances. You can sock it under your mattress and make nothing. You're actually losing money because you're not even keeping pace with inflation. I would suggest that with the legal list, we're hoping to keep pace with inflation, which may or may not happen depending on the rate of inflation. With the one investment board, I think, and the one investment vehicle, we're actually trying to hedge our bets and do better than the rate of inflation.
All right. I'm all for making money, so I'm good. All right. But I was just concerned me. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Deputy Mayor?
Just, I would, obviously, unless Madam Mayor, you got something else to add, but I was just going to say I'd support a recommendation. It's, when you look at what's in front of us, it's a very baby step. So, and I certainly would support her recommendation, Catherine's.
I didn't have any questions. I think most of my questions had to do with the MNRI. So I think we've spoken about that at length, and I'm comfortable with that sort of approach to it. And as the deputy mayor just said, I actually just wrote, these are incremental steps. There's still a lot that needs to happen till we actually have making money. So, and we can't do that until we actually take this step. And I do want to acknowledge again, I do appreciate the time that One Investment has taken, not only with Catherine, but tonight. And then Christine, your comments that you made with the deputy mayor, I think, now does seem to be a time. Obviously, we have to take into account our asset management plan. We have to take into account, what's right in front of us and how this all fits together. But it would seem now would be the time to take that step. So appreciate that. Okay, so if there's no further comments, we do have the recommended motion in front of us. I just have to find it. And of course, that is that the report be received for information and that staff work with One Investment on the steps necessary to join the One Joint Investment Board as a participating municipality under the prudent investor standard and report back to council with an appropriate investment policy. And the One Joint Investment Board agreement and an authorizing bylaw. If I can have a mover and a seconder, the deputy mayor and Councillor Hodgins. Any further discussion? All in favor? And that's carried. Okay. So once again, thank you to everybody involved. Catherine, I know that this has been a project that has taken time, so I appreciate you getting us to this point tonight. Thank you for joining us, gentlemen.
Have a great night.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Christine. Okay, so we will head back to the minutes. And we have a set of minutes in front of us from May 19th. Nothing needs to be amended. Then I would ask for a mover and a seconder to approve those minutes from May 19th as circulated. Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan. All in favor? And that's carried. On the consent agenda, there's a number of items on it. Nothing's been highlighted to me for discussion. Just wondered if council wanted to speak to any of those or had any questions on any of those items. And we do have everybody here to answer any questions on those. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, I just had one on the emergency fire services there. Just wondering, just the different purchases and stuff there. Are you aware of the canoe procurement where the municipalities there's a lot of fire equipment available through pre-negotiated pricing, and you can call and it's really simply, my understanding is from staff, you would just call or a member, you tell them, again, not changing, because again, professionals are very particular about what they want, with the boots, the helmets, Streamlight, MSA. I'm not saying changing product, saying taking what your ask is and going through the canoe procurement just to see what the pre-negotiated pricing is. Have you heard of this?
We have done some of that, but most of the stuff we're putting out to tender now. I usually get 3 quotes on it from different suppliers if that's available. And like the new truck is going through the county procurement, and I usually try and get at least 3 quotes on everything that we do.
Yeah, and I'm not actually talking about
Yeah.
that kind of capital. I'm more talking about bunker gear, helmets, stuff like, just to let you know that's available. And even if I think that's awesome, you're getting 3 quotes.
Yeah.
And then just checking the canoe procurement, because again, that's just a case of here's the SKU, what's the pricing, providing they have that model number.
So you mean there is a company that
Yeah, I think Ron needs to introduce it to you. Yeah, there's a lot of, you can type in fire services there and it'll list the companies there. And I don't think if you let them know you're part of the canoe procurement program, it'll be interesting. I'm in between a fan on this, by the way. I'll be curious of your feedback when you do check it, or hopefully we'll check it on products. But it doesn't sound like you've been introduced to it. So no.
So sorry, through the mayor, the chief's been working with Josh White, and Josh White's also aware of it. I think we've discussed canoe a couple of times, but I don't think Chief Ron's quite 100% familiar with the canoe, but certainly Josh White at the county procurement is. So my thinking is that, yeah, for just your everyday items, if we can go through canoe, and you and I can talk about that. Yeah,
Just to check. that.
exactly,
Right.
exactly.
I can't, just to check, that's all I mean,
Yeah.
because again, so
through the mayor, so I have priced some of that, and some of it I've got better prices through a company than I have.
100%. Yeah, no, I am not saying to buy from
Yep.
the company.
No,
I'm
I
not
know.
saying I like the companies. I'm just saying that's what they're blowing to us, and I'd be curious if you're.
Well, I think at the present time,
Yeah.
canoe is treated almost like another supplier. So just give us a price.
It's a municipal buying group. And I think that's where, we've been introduced to it like through conferences, and of course they're feeding it, but and in some cases, you're going to get a competitive price. In others, just do the diligence, but it is an option out there to check it.
Just more of an awareness for you, Dirk, just being.
Okay. Anything else on the consent agenda that needed to be spoken to? I actually had a question for Councillor Hodgins, and that was the letter that we received regarding the transition committees, and just wondered where we were with that. Are you aware with ABCA where we were with that?
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. I just know that our chair, Ray Chartrand, is going to be our representative on the transition.
Right. That was it.
With General Manager Heinbach.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. All right. If there isn't anything else on that, then a mover and a seconder to receive those items on the consent agenda for information, please. Councillor Westman, Councillor Regan, all in favor. And that's carried. On to correspondence. There's been 5 resolutions that we've received. Again, haven't been highlighted to speak to any of them, so if nobody wants to speak to them, a motion to receive and file those correspondence items, please. Councillor Hodgins and Deputy Mayor Manders. All in favor? And that's carried. On to committee reports. Blue Water,
Nothing to report.
Economic Development,
Nothing right now, but we will be meeting again at the end of August, Madam Mayor.
August. Okay. Lake Huron Water Board, we have a meeting on Thursday. Fire Board, there are the minutes from the draft minutes from the May 17th meeting. If anybody had any questions on those, you've got everybody here to speak to them. Okay. Anything from ABCA, Councillor Hodgins?
Nothing to report at this time, Madam Mayor.
Parks and Rec.
We will be meeting on June 23rd at 6 p.m.
And I believe that's when Monteith Brown's going to be back, right? Yeah. Trails and Connectivity.
Nothing to report, no.
Okay. Staff reports. Ron, your first one.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The first report is a joint report, and thank you to Lisa DeBoer as well. It's just basically an election update. It provides some more information. We did have a candidate information session co-hosted with the other lower tiers in the county. Basically they talked about what does running for council mean? If you are a councillor, what are your roles? What are your responsibilities? Things like that. So we didn't have a great turnout for that one, but again, it's early in the process. So number two, the candidates information and nomination packages are ready at the front counter and as well on the township website. The voters list, again, the dates are out there. June 1st is the deadline for voters to update or confirm school support designation through MPAC for the upcoming election, which is yesterday. And August 12th is the last day for voters to add or update their names to the voters list through the Elections Ontario website. Election signs, just a reminder that our election sign bylaw permits placement of election signs 60 days prior to voting day. So this year that date is August 27th. So no election signs can be placed out until August 27th. You will recall that the last day to submit a nomination for any one of the offices is 2 p.m. on Friday, August 21st. Section 5 there, the Compliance Audit Committee recruitment, it's just a bit of an update there. We are still, I believe, Lisa, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but they're still open to submit. Anybody interested in that? And basically that is the update to date. Madam Mayor.
Hey, thank you for that. Any questions on the municipal election update? Okay, then can I get a mover and a seconder to receive that report for information, please? Councillor Regan and Councillor Hodgins. All in favor? That's carried. All right, your second report, Ron.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The second report is in regards to the Biddulph Blanchard Fire Area Board, in accordance with the minutes that I'm sure everybody read from the May Biddulph Blanchard Fire Area Board meeting. It was a good, fairly lengthy discussion, and at the end of that discussion, you will see the motion listed in the minutes, and that motion is to basically recommend to both Perth South and the Township of Lucan Biddulph to extend the current Biddulph Blanchard Fire Area Agreement for a further year. So you will recall a number of months ago, we did extend it to the end of 2026. So as a result of this motion and the discussion at the May meeting, the recommendation to both councils is to further extend that agreement until December 31st, 2027. That will allow the chief a little more time to do what he needs to do to sort of try and control some of the spending and look for efficiencies within not just Biddulph Blanchard, but also the Lucan station as well. So I think, again, it was a good discussion. I think we made some headway there, and we would, or actually staff and the board is recommending to council that the agreement be further extended.
Okay, thank you. Discussion on this report. Counselor Hodgins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm curious, if the agreement were not extended, then what would be the alternative? Like in that case, would Perth South have to essentially just cover their own area? Just hypothetically speaking, of course.
We, sorry, through the mayor, we did a lot of hypotheticals at the meeting, and yeah, it's a number of things would have to happen. Obviously, they have an equity in the equipment and the building, but they don't have equity in the land that the fire hall sits on. So there's a lot of complicating factors in there, and I think some of the conversation sort of went to the fact that, you know what, we're a partnership. Lucan Biddulph and Perth South has a partnership in the operation of that station. And I think both parties agreed that we want that to continue. You know, everybody talked very highly of the service that the station provides, and they want that to continue. There are some discussions about, you know, value for their contribution and things like that. But that, once we start going down that road, you open things up, and what might be, you know, what they're looking for as a positive would be conversely a negative for Lucan Biddulph. And I think at this point in time, there's too many things that are in a state of flux while the chief is trying to, you know, figure things out and make operations more efficient. So I think at the end of the day, the thought was the best way forward is to give the chief a reasonable amount of time to do that, and let's see where we're at that point in time.
Okay, thank you very much for all that additional information. And the agreement is just proposed to be extended. There wouldn't be any significant changes to the structure of the agreement or anything.
That's correct. So if this motion passes tonight, I will then be bringing forward an amendment to the agreement bylaw.
Yeah, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Manders.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting when I, you know, first read it, I, you know, kind of wondering obviously what our fire chief, you know, thought of that, a 2 year, like, again, we've got to worry about our ratepayers, our taxpayers. I mean, it's, you know, planning, and you're planning for equipment, people, potential expense, not expense if this is dissolved. And I assume, if you could answer this, I assume you don't want to just do a 2 year plot along agreement for the life of this thing. So 2 more years and 2 years, 2 years, 2 years. And again, what ideally would you like to see, a 10-year, 20-year, 15-year for planning? Because again, that's I hope the message that we'll send back to them if we're not happy with this. Because, you know, certainly to me, it's a little bit insulting. So, you know, a 2 year, you know, what with the services we're offering in partnership, and saying, you know what, we'll think about it and we'll get back to you in 2 years. And that's what I mean by that comment.
Through the mayor, one of the problems we have with the two stations, there's way too much duplication between the two stations. Like, we've got 2 fully stocked rescue trucks that are only 6 kilometers apart for the area we cover. I think we have to address a lot of that to give them a signal that there is a way to bring this under control and become more efficient. But like, I would like to see a 10-year deal eventually, but I also understand from their viewpoint why they want to see, you know, some progression in that, looking after that duplication and that, to kind of see, to chart where we're going. Like, that we're working on a tender for a new truck, pumper tanker for the Granton station. And that truck would work on probably both avenues where it could go. But I mean, it's just got to become more efficient is the problem. We've got way too much apparatus in that for the area we cover and for the amount of, for the population.
So again, I guess you understand this better than I do, this 2 year agreement. But again, you know, after that, the council of the day, you're hoping we're not looking at another 2 years, the message I'm hearing.
Through the mayor, I am hoping it's a lot longer than that, because this just kind of,
yeah,
everything's, and for me to forecast, like with the Lucan Hall, when I just had it, I think we had a plan for 30 years into the future for our assets and that, because a lot of our stuff is timed out automatically. It's like our bunker gears, 10 years, you can put that in the cycle and everything, but there's too many unforeseen things now that it should be planned, and then Catherine knows what we're gonna spend and everything in the future, and so does Perth South.
Yeah.
And I think it'll be easier, but I understand from their point, they want to see this start to take place before they really commit any further.
And is there any part of the agreement where, you know, we can say it won't happen. I don't like before that date where are we asking for any notice before that 31st if they're going to pull the plug, or we just wait to the 31st and they say, like, and then do negotiations start after that if there's a separation, or if they have another plan, or is there some form of notice that we'd like to see, you know what, we're going to do it till here, but we want, you know, June 1st of that year notice given.
Through the mayor, I don't think it's possible for them to just give a date that, you know, on January 1st, this is all over. There's a lot of investment between the two and everything. I could see that if they did make that decision, it would probably have to be like a 4 or 5 year decision before they, you know, put a timeline in place on how, because you can't just like the public is used to a level of service, and we can't just stop that. But I mean, there's ways where you'd have to forecast that, how we're going to move forward with that. If it ever did come to that, I don't see that, but
And again, I don't want us obviously to stop our service, but we can only control what they're throwing at us. And they're throwing at us a 2-year agreement. And so, you know, that's the way I read it. And it's wrong. I don't know.
You say they, who do you mean by they?
Well, the Perth.
I would say it was the board. The
Yeah.
board came up with that,
Yeah,
which is
correct.
joint, and
Yep.
the department or the station is jointly owned by Lucan Biddulph and Perth South.
Mhm.
So it's not
So-
them dictating. That's what
What
the
the board
board
came up with.
has come
Yep.
together.
For 2 years. So then, so here,
You have to remember that both councils, they both passed motions indicating that the boards were going to be dissolved and everything was going to be rolled into one. Both so we have to kind of take that back because we are in nowhere near being able to do that because of everything that the chief and Ron have just said about how is it that both stations can be integrated into one department? What does that look like? The chief is only just taken on this position and he's nowhere near knowing how this department is going to function with 2 stations. And then from there, you know, we can talk about how Perth South remains a part owner of the system, or does that change? We have to remember both communities went through a fire service master plan. They both went through fire service master plans. So they are trying to determine what do fire services and emergency services look for them. And again, they're not in a position to end this agreement on December 31st because they don't have a plan for their fire services. And then the other part is our chief is on a contract. So to say, you know, let's go into 10 years now when, you know, the chief is, you know, he's constrained by his timelines with the length of contract, but he still hasn't been able to do what he needs to do to determine what the department needs and what it's going to look like.
gotcha. Yeah. No, that was explained well. Like I say, when I see a contract, see a date on it, that's all I can go by. When I say they, I mean the board, then, I mean, you know, obviously in conjunction with input, I'm assuming, created the contract. So I guess, I mean, I don't know. So,
A contract, I mean, this is like, you have to remember when it was the Biddulph Blanchard department, it was jointly owned by 2 municipalities. So, you know, contract, more of a partnership agreement. That's really what it has always been.
And through the mayor to the deputy mayor, I was just going to add, Perth South has a lot of challenges in front of them, and you know, we're only one piece. They actually don't have any physical fire halls in their municipality, so they contract with us through this agreement for the Grant Station coverage. They contract with St. Mary's for a portion of coverage around St. Mary's. And then they also have a contract with, or an agreement with Perth East. for Sebringville for the east end of their municipality. So they're trying to figure out what does, like the mayor said, what does their fire protection services look like? And I believe their fire services master plan said that they should build not one, but two. Now, in reality, is that even realistic? You know, they, like I said, they've got some big challenges that they've got to figure out. So this is just basically buying them some time to figure out their stuff, and then we can.
But it's also to figure out our stuff. Like,
Correct.
I think to the deputy mayor's point, you know, we're partners with Perth South, but our responsibility is to Lucan Biddulph. And so we have to make sure that the emergency services that we deliver and how we deliver them are best for our residents and ratepayers. And Perth South does play a role in that.
Well, and again, what caught me off guard was a little bit agreement, just being so short term, and again to which I better understand now after hearing everyone speak. Thank you.
All right, are there any other questions or discussion on the on that report from Ron? No. Okay, so with that, we do have a recommended motion in front of us to receive the report and to approve the extension of the agreement with the Township of Perth South for operation and governance of the Biddulph Blanchard Fire Area Board for a period of time to expire December 31st, 2027. Deputy Mayor and Councillor Regan. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Did you have anything verbal?
There was one thing, but I can't remember what it is.
Well, I think we're going to be here for a little bit. So if you remember, you can come back. Tina.
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. In continuing with our Section 270 policy updates, which staff began earlier this year, there are 2 additional policies being brought forward tonight. The first being the delegation of powers and duties, which was last reviewed in 2024. I will say, and since that time, this is a policy that staff refers to often, and in doing so, we have become routinely familiar with it and what delegations are there and those that could be added. So the red line amendment included shows which ones were added and which ones were removed. I won't go into detail as there are quite a few and they are contained within there in the report. Some changes that were made were mentioned that council should be aware of. The second policy reviewed and being brought forward is the hiring policy. It was last reviewed in 2020, so definitely due for update. Staff felt it was important to review this in conjunction with the delegation of powers and duties to ensure consistency between the 2 policies. Again, I won't go into detail with the changes as a red line version was included for your reference. Both policies were compared against other municipal policies and also reviewed with staff department heads. And I'll leave it at that if council has any questions.
Okay, I will open it up for questions, but I do want to thank you, Tina. This one, I know it took a lot of heavy lifting to get to this point. So questions or comments on what's in front of us? I'll just say, I appreciate the changes made to the delegation of powers to that bylaw and what you presented. I think it's, you know, the whole point of this bylaw is to streamline a lot of things so that not every little thing needs to come to council. We have our staff because they are, you know, they're the experts in the field. But we also have to remember that, you know, council is the final authority. And so when council makes a decision, we don't want to be put in a position where the delegation of authority bylaw can change that. And I think what you've come up with today is great and will be a great bylaw to get you through the next term of council. So Counselor Hodgins, I didn't know if you had any comments on, I think, okay. All right. So with that, you have recommended a motion to receive for information and and approve in principle the updated delegated powers and duties policy number 102-13-2026 and the hiring policy number 101-12-2026. The mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Westman and Councillor Regan, all in favor, and that's carried. Did you have anything else verbal?
I do not, thank you.
Okay, next on our list is building, and I believe joining us virtually, I believe he's joined us, is Marco Masudio, who is going to deliver the building report. And Lisa's just bringing him on. He's there. Don't know. Marco, are you? Yep, here he comes. There he is. Okay, Marco, you're still muted. I don't know whether or not you tried. Oh, there you are. Anyways, I will turn it over to you. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate you taking the time to do so.
Yes, and thank you to the mayor and to council for allowing me to present this report remotely. I see got my report on my screen, but I don't know, is it brought up on your screens?
I think Lisa is just doing that.
Okay. Okay, perfect. So just with a brief introduction to the data, building permits have reduced first quarter of this year compared to 2025. Oh, if we can just stay on the first page for a second. Yeah, perfect. However, there were still 3 single-family detached dwellings that remain the same year over year with a slight reduction.
Marco, can we just get you just to speak up just a little bit?
Okay, let me see if I can adjust this. Is that any better?
Yes, that's much
Okay.
better. Thank you. Not that we couldn't hear you, we could, but this
Yeah.
is better. Thank you.
Perfect. So slight reduction in the overall construction value of those houses. The houses were split between the old Clover Village and the new Timber Ridge subdivisions with 2 housing starts there. And with all the government incentives that we're hearing about in the news, we're pretty optimistic, and we've seen some additional activity going on in Timber Ridge for some single families, as well as the old Sauble Fields development for townhouse condos. So if we can go to the second page, please. Perfect. So this is just a breakdown of the permits by type. So as you can see, single families remain the same. We didn't have any townhouse applications in the first quarter of this year, but I do know that some have come in as part of quarter 2. Residential additions, renovations, garages, pools, decks, stuff like that, those have kind of remained relatively stable over the years. It's just the housing that kind of took a hit the past 3 years or so. And then this commercial industrial representing $19 million of construction in the first quarter. That is our wastewater treatment, new buildings and upgrades there. So as you can see, that number really skews our cost of construction, 20 million compared to just over 4 million last year. But only 11 permits total versus 20 of Q1 last year. So if we can go to the last page, please. Thank you. So this is just another breakdown showing some of those same numbers, but it does compare the permit fees collected year over year. So 1/3 the permit fees, but about 5 times the construction value. So that's the end of my report. I think that was easier to digest than the investment presentation and the financial statements. So I'll stick around for any questions if anybody has any.
Maybe easier, but certainly not less important.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for that, Marco. Questions or comments on what he's presented? Deputy Mayor.
Hi, Margot. I'm not sure if I'm right on this, so if you can correct me or see what your thoughts are. When it comes to the permit fees collected from the 11 permits now for the certainly for the single, I believe for the single family homes, it's to be collected at occupancy. So would there be another column maybe eventually in the future saying fees to be collected at occupancy, just so we know what will come in the future, even though it might be 2027? Am I right in that?
Sorry, through the mayor. So the permit fees is the building permit fee,
Not the
which is
DC.
collected at application and issuance. We were looking at tracking development charges collected at issuance versus at occupancy. We can look into that a bit further, but it's going to be kind of an administrative nightmare.
Yeah. But was there at one time on your reports, or am I mistaken? DC's never been on your reports or run. Okay. I
I'd
thought
have
they
to-
were.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd have to go back. I haven't seen development charges included in a report. Arnie
They,
usually handles that, so.
they used to be. No, but I see what you're saying, because then, yeah, adding the occupancy and subtracting it in and out, but maybe at the year-end report, we could, yeah, maybe at the year-end report, when a year-end report the following year, just stating maybe, I guess, how many were unoccupied and occupied, maybe something like that. Anyways, if you could do something, I think that'd be nice even, but I do agree with you, not to do it quarterly. It'd be a lot of work. Yeah, thank you.
Are there any other comments or questions? Just wondering, I mean, I think I've asked this the last couple of reports when, because we've got now the ARUs, block listed, and obviously we haven't had any uptake on that. I know that your department had gone to look at a couple of units and was looking at perhaps maybe one that would be ready to go, sort of thing, that would be accepted through planning processes. I just didn't know if, the other communities that you're working with, whether there's been any uptake to the ARUs. I know in Lisa's economic development report, she's indicated that she's fielded calls and there seems to be more interest, but we actually don't have any in the ground. So just wondered where we were from your perspective on that.
I think a lot of people are just kind of trying to figure things out with the ARUs. There are a few companies that are promoting like pre-approved plans. I know City of Toronto and a few other municipalities have like an online registry where like an applicant can pick from the plan or from a pre-approved list a plan they like. But you still have to go through like zoning approval because it's not a cookie cutter gonna fit into your zoning on your lot. We have seen a bit of an uptick because you can have an ARU in your basement as well. But so far, what I've seen in the detached ARUs, like a granny suite in the back of your property, I'm seeing custom site built. So we are working with a supplier. They've come forward to us and they wanted to post their designs as pre-approved, but those details aren't finalized yet.
But you have seen on the like the interior ones, you know, in your basement or whatever, you've
Yep.
seen some interest in that.
Yes, yeah,
Obviously not in our community, but
yeah,
throughout our neighboring communities.
there are here and there, and some municipalities offer a grant for those types
Yes.
of projects, but those wouldn't be like on a pre-approved
No, yep.
plan because everybody's house is
House
different.
is
It just
different.
wouldn't
Yep.
fit,
Nope. Understood.
right?
I'm just curious as to, because we've put these incentives in place. And I'm just curious as to the interest out there, you know, and what you're hearing. So thank you for that. All right. Are there any other questions or comments? With that, then I would ask for a mover and a seconder to receive that report for information, please. Councillor Hodgins and Councillor Regan. All in favor? And that's carried. All right. Thank you, Marco, for joining us. You're welcome to stay on and listen to the rest of it because I know you were so riveted earlier.
If it's just as exciting, I will.
Anyways, thank you for joining us.
Yep, thank you very much.
Okay. All right. Finance, Catherine, you've got another report for us.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. The second report is an annual report that's required under the DC Act and to provide council with the development charge balances as of the end of the fiscal year, and knew that that report needs to be presented to council before June 30th each year. So, and then also to make the report available to the public, and in past, we've done that on the website. And then what's new this year is now we must provide this report to the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing by July 15th. Before it was just if they requested it. So that's kind of some of the new things coming up. So in the details are in the attachments, and I have a summary here in the report. How much was collected and withdrawn for projects and our closing balances. As noted, building permits, as building permits are issued, DCs become collectible. And that was the case from January through October of last year. But starting in November for non-rental residential development, they can choose to defer paying the DCs until occupancy. So, which has been the case. So we've hadn't collected anything since November 3rd. There hasn't been any commercial or industrial development because those would still be due at the time of building permit. And then non-rental residential is a whole other ballgame where they can defer. They've always been able to defer at occupancy and then pay over 6 years. And now we can't charge interest either on anything. So those are the new changes. So is there any questions or concerns with that or any further information? I'll try to answer.
Okay, thank you for that, Catherine. Questions? Deputy Mayor Manders.
Just on the occupancy, maybe, I don't know if Mark or yourself, so when my understanding is basically, maybe Ron can answer this. My understanding is when they get occupancy, the building inspector goes there and makes sure they're in compliance and they basically get it that day. Is my understanding that they can start physically living there. I mean, living occupancy is what I'm talking about, obviously.
Correct.
Yeah.
So basically it's a final inspection.
Yep, final inspection. That's
To
what
make sure everything is
Yep.
is
So
up
it's-
to code and whatever.
It's,
And then before they get the occupancy,
yep,
they have to pay.
they got, so then if they get it at noon on Friday and they're thinking about moving in that weekend, if they didn't, they can't start moving until they pay.
That's my understanding. We haven't had.
Well,
haven't
this
got
all
there
new,
yet.
it's about to happen.
So it's getting closer, but
Yeah.
that's my understanding. They will not get the occupancy
Oh,
until
until
they
it's
pay.
paid, gotcha.
That's
So they won't get the occupancy. They'll be told that it's occupiable until they pay.
They
the
get their
per-
occupancy permit once we
Once,
get
once they, gotcha.
a fee. Yeah.
Okay, and then, okay, thank you.
Any, Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through you. Thanks for the report, Catherine. Good to see our DCs growing from the opening balance to the closing balance. I wanted to ask, when we have a large capital project that's DC funded or partially DC funded, like our wastewater treatment plant expansion. Can these funds go into negative balances then? Or how does that get tracked when you have a DC expenditure that exceeds the reserves?
Typically what we've been, pay for the project. If we've collected DCs over time, up to the point the project's done, then we'll move that money over back to reserves and fund the project from reserves or other like loans or those kinds of things. So, and then we continue to collect for that project over time. And each year we'll pull that back into reserves to help replenish. So when we get to the wastewater treatment plant project, we have a number of reserves collected up to this point, and more information will come forward on a future council report with that project, but that is something that we have to put towards our share of the funding. And then as we go forward, they'll do the rest with either whatever, choose like a loan or a combination of a loan and reserves, and then we'll replenish reserves as we collect it. That's been our practice. Technically, I guess they can go in negative. You're kind of borrowing against reserves, but there'd be some considerations with there, but we haven't done that typically here, do that.
Okay. Excuse me. Thank you for that. I guess the province wants these reported to them. And I think with a lot of other larger municipalities, they're concerned that municipalities are hoarding these reserves and they have huge amounts, which obviously is not the case for municipalities our size or smaller. So I just wondered if that would get reflected. We actually don't have $500 million. We have negative $5 million. And that's maybe shows the reality a bit more to the province of, our situation. Thanks for that.
I think it would be interesting with these reports now, like having to go to MMAH. I would hope that there would be a yearly report that would come from them indicating which municipalities in Ontario are sitting on these, hordes and hordes of development charges and not spending them, That would be interesting to come out of this. So anyways, any other questions or comments from about this report? Okay, thank you for that, Catherine. If I can get a mover and a seconder to receive it for information and that we post it on the municipal website. Councillor Westman and Deputy Mayor Manders, all in favor? And that's carried. Did you have anything verbal at all, Catherine? Okay. Public Works, Jeff.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have one report tonight, and it is a report to bring forward the results of our request for proposal for our master sanitary plan for the Lucan sanitary system. Through county procurement services, we did issue the proposal and request for proposals, and we did get 8 submissions. It says 5 right there, but it is 8 submissions we did receive. On those, we did start to review those 8 proposals. As we go through, Josh, the county procurement services did guide us through the process of rating the proposals that came in. One of the items is that we have a stage 1, which staff looked at experience and qualifications and the project plan itself. In stage 1, if the ranking fell below 45% or did not reach over 45%, that proposal did not go to stage 2. Stage 2 was then to apply the pricing criteria that the county put in, and then on doing that, then the county then sends back the total score with the ranking of the proposals. As you can see, five bids or 5 companies did make it to the second stage, and they were ranked through our process. In the percentages, you'll see that all 5 are very close, which is good, which is a great thing to see the competition. One of the items that you can see in the score there was different scores applied. I just wanted to make sure council knew, for instance, a score of 5 meant that it met the requirements. So basically, obviously, 5 is the middle score. So a 6 would be above average, all the way up to a 10, which would be outstanding. And then it's ranked in between there. So for council, I am recommending the BM Ross came in at the highest score of 86%. I am recommending that. And as the ranking came through. I did want to point out to council the timeline for completion for the BM Ross submission was June 27th, so 1 year from now. They put in 12 months at the earliest. The second bid that was ranked was Dillon Consulting, and it came in at a completion date of February 27th. So a little more in line with what our hopes were, because we want to move on with this information to the development charges and bringing back and updating the development charges with this information. So yeah, I'll open it up to council for questions.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Jeff. Questions or comments on what's in front of us? Deputy Mayor Mander.
So the timeline's interesting, but just curious, what do you feel the timeline is, or is that a bigger picture, I guess, for when you get it, and if you were to get it in February rather than June, to create the development charge new look or input on that then?
Yeah, I think
Is it the-
maybe Ron can speak better to about our hope was to get moving on the development charges. Because there is, we need to update it with all the information that we've got out there. There's other projects starting to show up, and the costs and that sort of thing. We want to make sure our development charges, match what we need to collect. And with the funding that we got through the for the expansion of the sewage treatment plant, that's one of the big items in the current DCs.
Yeah.
So I think that's important for us to look at adjusting
So
the
some
development
pluses and
charges.
some minuses in there.
Yeah, so through the mayor, I was just gonna add, this is a component of reopening the development charges. So council, I believe, is committed to reopening the development charges in light of the grant funding that we got for the plant. But as a result of that, time has marched on for a bit. We now, we're faced with some capital expenditures on the fire department. We've got some other components that we have to add in there, and this component is we think will be a large part of that. So we can't really reopen the development charges without having the answer to this. And that, so to Jeff's point, the difference in price between Dillon and BM Ross is that time frame from February to June significant? Is that I guess to what importance does council place upon that time frame? So if you pay more, you can get Dillon and get it earlier. But is that a priority, or is that worth the extra money? I guess is the question before council.
Okay. Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Jeff, for the report, and supportive of the recommended motion. I just wanted to say, I think it shows here, and there's a lot of detail in the report about the procurement process, and it's kind of clearly outlines that we did follow this, very formal procurement process. I think that's great. And I know, a lot of talk about county procurement, and it's really going to use more and more by all the lower tier municipalities that use that service. So that's great to see this, and that we are following, a very formal procurement process and going by scores. So I'm supportive of this, and I'll leave it there.
Any other questions or comments? So Jeff, kind of jumping on the scoring, how was the scoring determined? Like the 45% and the 25%, for 45% for experience and qualifications, 25% for project. I guess that's kind of what hit me when I read your report and I saw the difference in the scoring and then where we ended up. And first of all, I want to say to anybody that's listening, like, this is no reflection on any of these companies because I think that we would be well served by any of them. I'm just trying to wrap my head around how was is this just how scoring is for a project like this and county procurement? Yep, I'll just stop at that for now.
Yeah, that's a good question. And I would also just mention that these five, they did meet above average on all their components. So again, I think they're all very good consulting companies and engineering companies. So it does go back, and I'm afraid I don't have all the answers because the county procurement does run those percentages. So even though I was the one that was, and staff was asked to put input on qualifications and experience and the project plan itself, it was the county procurement process for this that defined the percentages and how the actual process worked for determining the rank in the process.
Okay, thank you for that. And I guess it goes down to the timeline. And through the rankings, we've got a number one, and you still felt that after that, that the timeline of not getting this, like the $15,000 difference, was worth sticking with the number one proponent and getting us information in June rather than moving us along quicker in the DC process. You understand that?
Yep. Yeah. So there was a great comment and again, it's a comment, but a timeline is only presented as a hope to finish. So we can apply pressure, and we certainly can move the project along, and when we do sit down with the person or the company and start talking about the plan and actually filling in the gaps and talking about how we want this process to go. Because we are going to, as the municipality, direct a bunch of information to them. One of the items will be the timeline. But it's hard because the timeline is just an estimate. And one of the comments is there is nothing that says that the timeline has to be exactly followed.
And I appreciate that. I would just hope, and I know it's difficult and I know things happen, but that the pressure would be put on to make sure that it at least resembles what's been presented, sort of thing. Yeah.
And maybe because I read the plans, again, I don't, I'm just trying to be neutral, but one of the items on the June 27th was that they hope to finish it 12 months by the earliest. So there was that wording in that the timeline was the earliest they could complete it would be 12 months, which that's why if there is some concern with council on a timeline, then probably Dylan would be worth looking into. And yeah.
Okay, interesting. Okay, Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you, just further to this discussion. I think if timeline was critical for us, then we had the opportunity through the RFP process to specify a timeline. We could have said it has to be done by this time through this process. So, and maybe that was reflected in, it could have been reflected in the scoring as well. There could have been a score for timeline, and if it was earlier up, they're going to get a higher score. I guess I'm a little bit uncomfortable with like kind of opening this up after it's been scored and we have like a, data that we're going by in this selection process. So I wouldn't be supportive of, I think, opening this up and like council choosing based on the criteria of timeline, if that wasn't something that was, specifically addressed within the procurement. But I hope that, recognizing that our the top ranked applicant did score lower on project plan, I hope, we can work with them to, discuss our desire to have it done sooner and see what can be done.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate those comments. And yeah, that was just my other thing. My other comment was just with the difference in the scoring on that project plan, is that the hopes would be when you have your initial meeting with the proponent that, you can get a better sense of where you're at with that. So, okay. Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, the timeline is important, obviously, and I agree with Councillor Hodgins, but again, I think our staff definitely could pick apart, I'm sure, BM Ross projects and Dillon projects that have taken longer than estimated or or what they specified, but there certainly has been some issues with delays with some of the engineering companies we're dealing with. So again, I guess all we can do is I think go with what Jeff's recommending, and maybe once you award it to them and you have a conversation with them that, again, June-ish or whatever the wording was, we just hope that it's still within the year of June-ish, and that there is concern. I have concerns with them and their timelines. I'll just say it. I do. Me being on council and awarding them projects, I've got concerns with that wording, and I've got concerns with that company as far as, again, which good for them, probably how busy they are. Certainly, I guess if they're, I don't think we can make a motion that way, but if you have, well, obviously, if you have concerns that it's going to be end of year the following year, I think we should be coming back to council. But I don't want to delay. I don't want us to delay this. I do want us to proceed, but again, I do have concerns.
Yeah, and I'll just say, Councillor Hodgins did touch on it. The scoring, that when we sit down and we rank and when we use points from 0 to 10, the plan is picked apart. And that part of that is the timeline and part of the details that are supplied. So the scoring did reflect. So when we did do the ranking, all that does come back in the ranking. So that's why I'm recommending we follow the ranking. Yeah.
No, and I appreciate I appreciate the concern of after going through the process and where we are tonight with this about deviating from the scoring and how it's gone. I just hope that we can hold it to the June as opposed to perhaps a January. And in fairness, I would say that in all likelihood, perhaps maybe a February turnaround might have been also aggressive, like that might have been aggressive turnaround. So I would question those timelines as well. But I think you understand the concerns that you've heard, and we'll, work with the proponent and go from there, I guess. Okay. Okay, so we do have, I guess I'm sorry, I should ask if there's been any more comment from council. With that in mind, then the recommended motion is that the report be received and that staff be authorized to accept the proposal from BM Ross to complete the Lucan Master Sanitary Study. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Hodgins and Deputy Mayor Manders. All in favor? And that's carried. Did you have anything verbal, Jeff? Okay, thank you. Darcy, I know you don't have anything written, but do you have anything verbal to let us know about?
Yes, quickly through the mayor. Just a quick update on the splash pad. I know probably everybody's been hearing it, especially now that the sun come out. And we just had a very good discussion on timelines, but our timelines are about, we're hoping, we worked with a local company. We think we have an option, and our timelines are about hopefully in the next 2 weeks, we'll have it back up and operating. So I will obviously keep everybody aware when it does get up and operating, but we're hoping within the next 2 weeks.
Okay, good to know. Questions on that or not? Anything? Okay. Okay, thanks, Darcy. Yeah, sorry, Councillor Westman.
Through you, Madam Mayor. Darcy, just want to confirm, thank you for sending me the email about the Granton Park ball diamond upgrades. So I know that's going to affect the green waste bin because you're going to need the space and whatever to do the work. So, but I do appreciate all the work that's been done to get the bin back and get that work done. So I really, I know it's going to be a great improvement for the park. So thank you.
Okay, Lisa, Economic Development.
Thank you. Through you, Madam Mayor, tonight, there is as part of our annual update to living documents or living plans that the township has. So we have it's our township strategic plan that we started in 2024. So, and it goes to 2029. So this is our annual review of that document, and it has been summarized. So the 5 key strategic directions. So each one has been summarized in the chart attached to the report, along with the action item, the timing, and the status of each of those. They do spread across pretty much all our departments, all of these sections. So each one of us kind of does touch on these. Let's see, most of them will be ongoing. There's a few that have been started. Obviously, the streetscape and accessibility, we did that in 26, so that's been initiated. A couple was changed for the urban design was changed to next year. So again, it's just part of our annual updates, staff updates on all our plans. So if anyone has any questions on that, but I do want to mention about the ARUs. It is in this, so it's kind of related. We did receive this week a really great document from the county, a very practical guide to what are ARUs and that sort of thing. So we will be releasing a really good communications strategy as part of that, some promotions on our social medias, explaining it all about ARUs. So it's actually a really great document that the county produced for us. So look for that coming as well.
Okay, great. Thank you for that, Lisa. Okay, questions or comments on the strategic plan update? There we are. Councillor Hodgins.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just one quick comment. Thank you for the report, first of all. When it comes to the status updates and the comments that we provide on an annual basis, or as we revisit this, I just think it'd be good to have like a kind of more specificity or more specific actions that have been done. Because I think there has been a lot of things that have been achieved and a lot of actions where we have taken meaningful steps. And it says it generally in a lot of the comments, but I just think having some more specific items just to capture those might be helpful for future reporting. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for those comments. Any other questions or comments? Okay. With that, I would ask for a mover and a seconder to receive that report for information. Councillor Regan and Deputy Mayor Manders, all in favor? And that's carried. And anything else verbal or anything, Lisa? No, that's all. Okay, notices of motion. Councillor comments. I will start. There's been a lot of chatter around town the last few months about the Junior C Club. And I will just say I was able to attend, the Deputy Mayor attended, and so did Councillor Regan, the information session that the new management group and new board with new president held on Friday, and it was well attended. And I think that it was very positive. I know Darcy's is working very closely with them, and he's taken on a role on the board as the municipal liaison. But certainly, you know, the last couple months, there's been a lot of chatter, rumor, everything about it. But I do think the group that is there for anybody that's been involved in hockey or anybody that's been involved in community or lived here for a long time, a lot of the people that are on the board or on the management side of the team these will be familiar names to people. And I think that there can be some confidence that this group will work towards putting a positive, entertaining product on the ice. They have a clear plan, timeline of what they've got, what they're looking at. I think everybody recognizes that it will be building. It will be something that will be building over the next couple of years, but they hope to be aggressive in becoming competitive. And, you know, that obviously has to do with who they can recruit to be part, who they can, you know, convince to come try out and be part of the organization. And that will help, I think, you know, as they gain the trust back from the community, trust back from organizations. And I think that this team, the team that presented on Friday has a clear understanding of that. And we'll certainly look forward to junior hockey again in the fall. So I'll just leave that one at that. Any other counselor comments? Deputy Mayor Manders.
Just a reminder that the Lions Club's having a fundraiser there a week from Wednesday. If you, they're asking obviously to pre-get your ticket for steak night for Wednesday. So it's June 10th. Thank you.
I believe that's the men's steak night.
Men's steak night.
Councillor Regan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to remind people that there's a show and shine car show at the Legion, Saturday, June 27th from 10 to 2. Lots of fun, lots of door prizes. They are looking for more door prizes. And I did say that if there's anyone that's interested in doing it, they can contact me and then I can give them the information to get in contact with somebody at the Legion. I just had one other quick thing. I just want to let council know that I completed a 2-day basic emergency management course. I got the course. I'm not used to taking exams. I'm used to giving them, but solid pass. So I'm good.
Solid pass.
Solid pass, yeah.
So we can all feel confident for when that emergency arises.
It was an A. It was an A. So thank you.
Congratulations. Any other councillor comments? Councillor Westman.
Yeah, through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, there's a couple of events in the Granton Park. The Paston Park, I don't have the date here, but it's that's coming up. That's a fundraiser for dialysis research and dialysis treatment. There's also the Villages United Church Strawberry and Beef Supper coming up on the, let me just find that, on the 17th, and the Granton Firemen's Association Smoke Park Chop Dinner is on the 20th. So lots of good food and community stuff going on in the area. So everybody should get their tickets and dig in.
Great. Thank you very much for that. Any other comments? I know, pressure, right? Okay, with that, we've got just one bylaw because the Court of Revision bylaw will come back at the next meeting, right? Right. So we just have one bylaw in front of us, and that is the confirming bylaw. So the motion is that bylaw 22-2026 be read a first, second, third, and final time and be adopted. A mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Hodgins and Councillor Westman, all in favor? And that's carried. And resolved that the council meeting be adjourned at 8:40 p.m. Deputy Mayor Manders and Councillor Regan, all in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much.